The wind moved across the prairie like a warning no one wanted to hear. It lifted the dust from the dry earth and carried it down the single road that cut through the small frontier town. People there believed in survival more than kindness, in reputation more than truth. And on that afternoon, standing in front of a crowd that had already decided her fate, was 13-year-old Eliza May Turner. Her hands trembled, but her voice did not. "I'm too young to be a wife," she said. The words fell into the silence like a stone into still water. Gasps followed. Some shook their heads. Others looked away. In that town, girls did not speak against arrangements made by fathers and sealed by handshakes. Her father stood rigid beside her, jaw clenched, shame burning across his face. The man she was meant to marry, nearly 3 times her age, stared at her with wounded pride. No one expected anyone to defend her. Except the rancher. Thomas Callahan had been leaning against the hitching post outside the general store, hat shadowing his eyes. He was known as a quiet man who owned the largest spread of land for miles. Hardworking. Private. Fair. He was not known for interfering. But he had heard the fear in her voice. And he recognized it. Thomas stepped forward slowly, boots heavy against the wood planks. "She's right," he said, calm but firm. "She's just a child." The town turned toward him as if the earth itself had shifted. Her father bristled. "This ain't your concern, Callahan." Thomas met Eliza's wide blue eyes. There was something there, desperation, yes, but also courage. "Anytime a child's afraid," he replied evenly, "it becomes everyone's concern." The argument grew louder. Voices overlapped. Accusations were thrown like stones. In the end, pride mattered more than compassion, and her father, furious at being publicly challenged, did something no one expected. He disowned her in front of them all. "Then she ain't my daughter no more." The words struck harder than any slap. Eliza stood frozen as the crowd dispersed, leaving her alone in the dust. Alone. Until Thomas approached her. He removed his hat, something few men ever saw him do. "You got anywhere to go?" he asked gently. She shook her head. Thomas hesitated only a second. "You can stay at my ranch. In the bunkhouse. Separate quarters. You'll be safe there. No one will force you into anything." She searched his face for deception. She found none. Just steadiness. That was how the whispers began. By nightfall, the town had created its own version of the story. They said Thomas had taken the girl for himself. They said he had always wanted a young bride. They said kindness was just another word for weakness. But they were wrong. At the ranch, Thomas kept his word. Eliza stayed in the old foreman's quarters, a small but clean cabin near the main house. He hired Mrs. Green, a widow from 2 towns over, to help look after her and teach her reading and arithmetic. He set strict boundaries that even his ranch hands understood without question. "You treat her like you would your own sister," he told them. "Or you leave." Eliza had never known safety before that ranch. She had known chores, silence, and obedience. But now she learned something new: choice. Weeks turned into months. She learned to ride properly, not sidesaddle like she had been taught, but strong and balanced. She learned to read by lantern light. She learned that her thoughts mattered. Thomas rarely spoke about why he had intervened. But late one evening, as they sat on opposite sides of the porch, he finally told her the truth. "I had a sister once," he said quietly. "She didn't get the chance you're getting." He didn't need to say more. Eliza understood then that she wasn't a burden. She was a promise he had made to himself long ago. The town never stopped whispering. Buyers avoided the ranch at first. Preachers hinted at sin from their pulpits. But Thomas never defended himself publicly. He defended her privately, daily, consistently. And Eliza began to change. The frightened girl who had once stood in the dust became someone stronger. She read everything she could get her hands on. She started keeping accounts for the ranch. She offered suggestions that increased profits. She planted a vegetable garden that fed not only the ranch hands but struggling families nearby. People started noticing. Not the rumors. Her. 1 year after she had said those brave words in the street, the same townsfolk who had shamed her watched as she rode into town beside Thomas, not behind him. Her head was high, her eyes steady. She was no one's property. She was becoming her own person. And the rancher who had quietly kept her safe had given her something more valuable than protection. He had given her time. If this story is touching your heart, if you believe courage deserves a voice and kindness deserves recognition, make sure you subscribe to this channel. Stories like Eliza's remind us that sometimes the quietest heroes make the loudest difference. By the time Eliza turned 15, the ranch had transformed in more ways than one. What began as shelter had become opportunity. Thomas never treated her like a charity case. He treated her like an apprentice. He showed her how contracts were negotiated, how to judge cattle health, how to read the sky before a storm. He taught her that strength did not come from domination but from integrity. But the past does not disappear quietly. One afternoon, 2 years after she had been cast out, her father returned. He arrived at the ranch thin, bitter, and desperate. The failed harvests and poor decisions had cost him nearly everything. Word had spread that Thomas Callahan's ranch was thriving, partly due to the girl. He demanded to see her. Eliza walked out to meet him on her own terms. No trembling hands this time. You shamed this family, he began. No, she answered calmly. I refused to be sold. The words hit him harder now than they had years ago. He looked around at the thriving ranch, the repaired fences, the well-fed cattle, the workers who respected her. You think you're better than us now. I think I'm free. Thomas stood at a distance, allowing her to speak for herself. He had not saved her to control her voice. Her father's anger faltered into something else. Regret. Pride wounded by truth. He finally admitted he had come asking for work. Eliza could have turned him away. Instead, she surprised everyone. We don't turn away those willing to work honestly, she said. But you'll earn your place here. Like anyone else. It was not revenge. It was justice. Working under his daughter humbled the man more than poverty ever had. And slowly, painfully, he began to see the strength he had once tried to silence. Meanwhile, the town's whispers shifted tone. The preacher who had once hinted at wrongdoing publicly thanked Thomas for supporting education. Families sent their daughters to learn reading from Eliza in the evenings. What had begun as scandal became a quiet revolution. Eliza made one decision clear to Thomas on her 16th birthday. I'm not staying because I owe you, she said. I know, he replied. I'm staying because I choose to. And that was the difference. Years later, when she was grown and fully capable of choosing her own future, many suitors came calling. Some were kind. Some were ambitious. Some were drawn to her intelligence and quiet authority. Thomas never interfered. Because protecting someone does not mean possessing them. In time, Eliza chose a life that expanded beyond the ranch. She opened a small schoolhouse funded by ranch profits. She taught girls that courage is not loud but steady. That, no, is a complete sentence. That age does not determine worth. On the day the schoolhouse opened, the town gathered again, just like they had years ago when she first spoke up. But this time, there was no shame in the air. Only respect. Thomas stood at the back of the crowd, hat in hand, watching as she cut the ribbon. No one whispered anymore. They understood. He had not kept her. He had kept her safe. And because of that, she had become unstoppable. If this story moved you, if you believe one brave sentence can change a life, subscribe to this channel and join us for more powerful stories of courage, protection, and transformation. Your support helps keep these stories alive, and you never know which one might inspire someone to stand up and say, I deserve better.